This Val-Con video is powered by GTX server hosting.
All right. Well, so for those of you who are tuned in, start texting everybody you know and say, because we've got a VIP interview coming up, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's bring him on in. Say hello, everybody, to Lee Williams.
Welcome in, Lee. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Lee.
Hello.
Welcome.
What a build-up! I feel really nervous now. I put myself down.
So good to see you and talk to you again. How have you been?
Thank you. I've been great. Thank you. Yes, yeah, and I'm really excited by the event today. I've been out just until a few minutes ago, so I've not been able to catch up with much. But I'm really looking forward to watching everything later. It's just such an amazing thing that you've set up here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun, and the best thing was about 2 hours into it. I think I texted Gwen. And I was like, it's just hey, it's working. All this prep we've been doing for months, like, hey, it's working. So that's great. Well, so for the viewers out there, Lee, can you explain to everybody, who you are and what contributions, what your contribution has been to Valheim over the years?
So I'm the writer and the sort of narrative designer for Valheim. So I came up with the basics, the story premise and the lore, the background to Valheim, the 10th world, and so on. And then I've written all of the text for the game, a lot of background text that doesn't even get shown in the game about the world and things, but which sort of informs all of the story, and all the rune stones, the item descriptions, the dreams, all the sort of incidental text in the game. I think there's a couple of NPCs, like the tutorial ones and the quest givers, that I didn't do, but everything else, all the writing I did for the game.
You bring it to life.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's for me, it's just wonderful to see my writing in such a great game. I enjoy Valheim a lot myself, and I think the work everybody else did to create the mood, the visuals, the music, everything. It's an honor to have my words, in such good company.
Well, it's fun to see what the work, obviously, that everybody else who worked on Valheim has done, but your storytelling too, because if you've seen some of the videos too that we've been showing, not only are there amazing builds, but everybody seems to be inspired to tell stories around the things that they're building, and it's just like it's so much fun. And like, I know that every time I pass a runestone, I have to click it. I don't care how many times I've read it, like I have to click it. It's something that just tickles you in to make it feel like it's a living, breathing world with history. But I'm going to pass the next question over to Gwen.
That's lovely to hear, though. Yes.
Yeah, so we had earlier Patrick Jarlstam, another guest who was involved in the making of Valheim on the music side, the composer, and we asked him the same question. I know you both have been quite involved, with the community itself and the fans, and very generous with your time and in terms of hopping on for things like this, for interviews and stuff. How what do you think of this, of Val-Con, like fans coming together to create this 24-hour online streaming event for the 4-year anniversary?
It's amazing. It's phenomenal. And it's just, as I was saying, it feels a real honor to have contributed to something that obviously really, really inspired and touched so many people. It genuinely is. It's amazing to see something like this. And to think that I was, I've been able to be a part of that. So it's really satisfying. And for me, just because, although I did the writing for Valheim, I think I can say without boasting that I'm a big fan of the game, because most of it was not, it's not me. So I'm a fan myself, and I've played a lot of Valheim myself. So this event just is great as a fan too. I'm really looking forward to seeing things later, and I'll be watching some with my kids, with my boys when they get back, because we've played a lot of Valheim together.
So Lee, you're one of us too. Then you're a fan.
I am.
So.
I am. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we're all
Yeah.
celebrating together.
Yeah. Yeah, because I still play I've not played actually just recently. I will do when we've got the last when I can step into the last biome and explore that a bit, so I can get some of the writing, finalized for that. But I'm kind of holding off. What I want to do, one of my boys, I've played a lot with one of my boys, and the other one is just getting old enough to be able to manage the controls and things. So what I really want to do is when we go to like 1.0, have another full playthrough, like with them together. So I'm sort of looking forward to that.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I guess the next question for me is actually a little bit in two-part. Like, let's start with the main one. Like how the community's engagement with the lore and all the story has influenced and maybe inspired you over the last 4 years?
A huge amount. I mean, as you mentioned earlier about people being inspired and coming up with their own stories and things, and I think that's been particularly satisfying for me. And I also feel I feel a little bit sort of vindicated by that in the choice I made right at the start, which was that I didn't want the story of Valheim to be too prescriptive. And I remember talking with Richard a lot in the very early days about not. He was on the same page as me. We didn't want to have. We wanted the player to be the player character to be as vague as possible, so that people could project themselves into their players. And similarly, we didn't want the story. We wanted the player to be able to kind of exist separately, almost from the story, so you wouldn't be led through it and feel that you were being forced into playing one particular type of character and experiencing one exact story. So we wanted the lore to be something that just kind of surrounded the world, rather than something which forced the player to go on a particular journey that
I see.
Might not have wanted to. So it's been lovely to see that. I think we succeeded with that there's enough freedom there within the world and within the story that players are able to put their own stories into it, which is that's lovely for me to see, because I think that feels like we did make, people wouldn't have been able to do that so easily if the story had been fixed, fixed around the player.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. Like, and the second part was, this is just for me, by the way, are you the face behind Hugin? Because that's what I create the most lore with personally.
Hugin, behind the Hugin,
the storytelling bird.
In what way do you mean? Sorry.
Yeah. So if you join into the game, this raven pops up, tells you what to do, like your very first steps.
I see. Yes. Yeah. I guess in a sense, I've never really thought of that before, but now you've brought it up. I like that. I'm gonna go with that. Because
good.
Yeah, that's a nice. I guess in a sense I am. I think actually, Hugin and Moonin in particular, maybe slightly more. That I do feel. I think my role a little bit. What I've enjoyed writing most are the memories, the very vague memories you get sometimes as a player in dreams and things. And I kind of like that. I suppose do see my role, because I do think a lot, and I think in writing for video games in general, you're always thinking of the player's experience. What's the player going to feel when they read this thing that you've written, and so on. And I think I've always quite liked the thought of, I want to give the player a little bit of mystery and also a little bit of, as I say, nothing too prescriptive about their story, but I would like to give them nudges into making a backstory for their own character, if you see what I mean. So when you get these dreams that you're just a little vague snippets, and I tried to make them all really general. So you get a dream that you're sitting by a roaring fire. All of them will have, any backstory you want for your Viking character in the game, they will have sat by a fire at some point, or they remember the salt spray of the sea. So they're all quite general memories. But I would like to think of them as being, I'm a little bit like Moonin, perhaps, in that I'm nudging them with little memories that hopefully will spark them into being able to create their own character and their own story.
Because after multiple playthroughs, I still feel that. Sorry, Emma, go.
You say that you really like the dreams and the story that tells as well, but what would you say is your favorite piece of lore and why?
I think that's very tough. I do like the and I think the bits that I'm proudest of, I guess, the parts of my own writing that I like the most. It always feels weird to talk about the bits of your own writing that you like, but the bits that I'm proudest of, I suppose, are I do like the little touch, the slightly more personal touches sometimes in the bits that I'm particularly fond of are the little bits of humor that I managed to put in there. So now and then when they get jealous of somebody else's beard and write it down on
I love those too.
because they're annoyed about it.
Like the merchants, or like, did you fart?
Yes, yeah, and some of the little bit, the little bits of humor and things, and also some of the bits of sort of. I wanted to have little bits that are a little bit wistful, sort of a little bit of melancholy as well in some moments there. So I think one of the ones I like most was there's a Viking writes something on a runestone about and she remembers a baby from her having a baby, and it's just like a phantom weight in the crook of her arm, and she can't quite place what, there's some little things like that where they have these just quite poignant half memories of a previous life, that sort of thing. So I'm quite proud of those. I'm also quite proud, I think, of the lore for some of the enemies. One of the first things I wrote was the Grey Dwarf, the runestone describing the Grey Dwarfs, and they're like the souls of sinners that rot under the ground, and they make like a cyst in the earth. So I'm quite pleased with some of those bits of lore.
That bit of lore has become kind of a fan fiction favorite, just so you know. I don't know if you're aware,
really?
But yeah, Robin Grimcore kind of started it with his little documentary that he did calling him George, and it's kind of taken off, and now George lives in all of our hearts. I just gotta say, we all love the Grey Dwarf. It's true, the Greyling. There are so many different stories that are kind of all weaved together from the main storyline that's still gives us a lot of freedom, and then all these little different weavings together. If there was one storyline in Valheim that you would kind of like to expand on and do more about, what would that be?
Some of the bosses, Yagluth in particular, I would like to do a little bit more to that. The idea of there being these ancient civilizations in Valheim. I was always quite drawn to that, and there's a fair bit of lore about those kind of behind the scenes that doesn't get shown in the game, but that sort of informed what gets written on some of the runestones. So I think I would quite like to explore that in a little more detail, which might still happen in one way or another, but
that would be really interesting. I mean, I think it's always interesting to find lore, and I check the runestones too, and if I ever find one I haven't read before, I'm so excited. More lore behind the bosses themselves. I'm gonna vote for that too. I think that would be really interesting.
100%.
Thank you.
Did we just confirm more runestones in the plains?
I'm teasing. I better not confirm anything here.
I'm teasing.
but it's possible. I mean, I would like to. I like adding stuff. I like writing the runestones. So I think certainly there'll be some more in the final biome, and there may well be some more back through the game as well.
It's interesting because
yes. Oh, certainly, yes.
The runestones kind of throw me sometimes, because if I am in a certain place and I read a runestone that tells a particular type of story or warning or something, I'm literally looking around like, is this about to happen? Is this stone trying to tell me something right here? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. We did have to change some of the early ones because I'd written them a bit too. I'm trying to think of an example now. I'd written them as if something was about to happen there, and it had lots of players were struggling with the same thing, that they interpreted the runestone as being like, you have to do something in this particular place and something will happen, or something is about to happen now. and they were all red herrings. I hadn't realised they would seem like that in game. So,
That's entertaining in its own way, I gotta say.
we had to change those because we were getting players. There was one that said that the one that's talked about iron coming from the sky, which is more to do with the fact you find like meteorites essentially. But the way I'd worded that to begin with was as if here at this point at the runestone something was going to happen. So you had lots of players in the game reading it and just being like, where is it then? And they might camp around there for ages waiting for something to happen. And I'm like, oh no, I've tricked them without meaning to. So we had to reword that.
Yeah, that is funny. So, Lee, how do you balance Norse mythology with this original fantasy that's going on in the 10th realm of Valheim?
Well, I think that was something which I worried a lot about to start with when I began writing. I read a lot. I mean, I'm a fan of mythology and folklore, and I'd read a lot of the sagas and things, so I was already very keen on doing that, but I did worry. I thought, how am I going to bring in? The nice thing was to start with. I had the idea of it's the 10th world, so that's a nice thing immediately because you're placing it slightly outside of conventional Norse mythology, so it gives us a little bit of license straight away to be a bit fast and loose. And to come up with our own ideas. But I was still worried. How do I reconcile this source material, which lots of people know very, very well, lots of people know much better than I do, with what I want to write. But I think it turned out to be easier than I was expecting. I think part of it is that mythology anyway contradicts itself a lot. If you read, when you read different sources of Norse mythology, actually it's not all the same. It can't all gel together. It is self-contradictory because it was an oral tradition largely, and so it was told and retold by so many different people, so you get different versions of it and they don't all match up neatly, and that's some of the charm of it. And so I think there was a point when I sort of I guess I began to feel part myself, like part of a tradition of retelling and reinterpreting these myths. So I didn't feel so much like I wasn't I'm not like a modern observer who's detached from it and I'm just writing something about it. But I think I read a lot and I just began to feel like actually there's no reason why I can't do this. I've kind of got a right. All of us have to retell these stories as we want to. This is kind of like common cultural material, if you like, and people have been reinterpreting it and retelling it and drawing their own things from it for centuries. So really, I sort of thought I'm part of a tradition, which is a lovely way of looking at it when I began to look at it like that.
Absolutely.
It is.
And then I sort of thought, well, what I can do is be as honest as I can and express what these traditions and these archetypes and these stories mean to me, and kind of filter them through my own point of view a little bit. And when I started doing that, it came quite naturally. I guess actually it was easier than I anticipated.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Norse literature and Norse sagas are all wacky as hell as well. So you've got a lot of room for interpretation and reinterpretation of those. So I love that. That's kind of how you're seeing your work fit into this kind of long tradition.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's not like a sacred canon, and it was almost sort of never viewed in that way. Norse mythology, like all sort of mythological traditions, it was there as something like as a pool for people to draw on, like a common cultural thing. So as you say, and there's a lot of really, there are a lot of weird and wacky things that happen in Norse myths.
Indeed.
But I sort of feel, I can't, I can't go weirder than that. So really, whatever I see is fine.
Well, I appreciate the originality of it too, because we all, like you said, so many people already know Norse mythology, and we're in the 10th realm. It's a new Norse mythology, with hints of the original, but now it's new, and that's one of the things I think so much media misses out. Make something new, and mix it with the already known, and that's just like one of the charms
and that was a great joy of writing it as well, that we were able to do that. And I think a conscious decision was made early on to sort of, we steered away a little bit. They're mentioned in the text, but we steered away a little bit from some of the really common, from Thor and from Loki in particular. I think, and not to say that they're not involved and that they won't be involved, but just, I think we just didn't want to just.
You didn't want to be on the nose with it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think, and there's such a lot of good stuff to draw from that we thought, if we steer away from those at least to start with, then it's it's a nicer way in.
Yeah, that sounds good. And speaking of weird and wacky, what is the weirdest or most unexpected lore theory that you've heard or seen from the fan base?
Oh, I've seen a few. I've seen a few recently.
Probably a lot to do with the Deep North, right? The theories have been.
Yes, there was a good video. Ember, I think.
Yes, she made one about that. Yeah,
I remember that I've seen, and a couple of other similar ones. A lot of people, funnily enough, having just mentioned Loki, a lot of people speculating on involvement from Loki, from Odin himself, Ragnarok. Theories around those kind of some of those big events in the Deep North, which I don't really want to say too much about at the moment.
Of course.
For the main reason being that it's kind of, we're in the middle of doing it now, so I don't want to say anything that might be subject to change later. But I've seen some really interesting theories, and a lot of the time when I see fan theories. I mean, sometimes I'll go online and I'll see something like somebody on Reddit will say, "Oh, I don't think this and this quite matches up in the lore," and I'll read that and I'll think, "Yeah, they're right. Actually, they got a point. It doesn't match up." And then I'll read the first
just
comment.
Like real mythology.
Like real mythology. That's my excuse. Usually. Well, it doesn't have to make sense. Mythology doesn't. But then sometimes also I'll see in a comment somebody will have written, "No, it does make sense because this and this," and I'll think, "Oh." Yes, I'm having that. I'm having that. That's exactly why it does make sense. Yes, that's what I meant.
You're like reaching out, digital fist bump to that person who replied.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Planned it all along.
I planned it that way all along. And a lot of the theories that I do read, they will. They're great. It's actually a lovely thing, I suppose, about doing it in early access, which I'd not done in a game before. When you're writing it and it's in early access like that, we've had so many people been playing Valheim already that some of the lore that I've written has been almost like a bit of a conversation with players in a way that you wouldn't usually have in a game, because normally, of course, you'll write it all before anybody gets to see it, except for testers, and then you can't easily go back and change it. But in Valheim, I've been able to see like what people respond to, what people really enjoy about the lore, get a sense of what direction I feel people might like it to go in. And I've been able to, maybe not always successfully, but I've been able to, I think, kind of let that inform the next piece of writing that I do.
Yeah. You mentioned Reddit, right? You saw some lore on Reddit. Like, it actually hooks perfectly into the next question. Like, have you ever seen any fan art, fiction, what do you think that inspired you or surprised you? Like you said, you're going to run with that answer, but this one, let's let that play out or something. Like, how did that inspire you maybe to write something new or for future things?
There've been quite a few occasions like that where I've read things. That video from Ember was one that inspired me actually to, first of all, it's just lovely to get good feedback, and it's just an amazing feeling that somebody has looked at your lore and really thought about it, and you've inspired somebody like that. It's just the best feeling. And then some of that can inspire you in turn. I've seen some amazing I think it was Mythic that did the video just before I came on here, and some of those builds and other builds I've seen. I've seen some that have definitely fed into my ideas about some of the ancient civilizations in Valheim. And how they might have looked and been. That's visually, I've seen some builds that have made me think, oh wow, that's that if Vikings, if sort of settlers in Valheim stayed long enough which is what we're assuming happened at different ages in the past and so on, then this is the kind of thing. This is how they might build. This is how things might turn out. So, and that's kind of nice because actually that's what players have been doing. They've been transported to Valheim, and this is what they ended up with. So for me, I'm trying to think of a story about people who've been transported to Valheim. What would they end up building and doing? So I've almost got like a real example of that when I look at some of the art.
Yeah, and that open interpretation in the lore really helps getting them to make their own stories and stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and the art, all the fan art and the fiction and things that I've seen from Valheim, there's so much of it, and it's amazing. You know, like I say, it's just the nicest feeling as well to think, you know, to be part of that.
Yeah. You said before that you also like to play with one of your sons and sometimes even your younger son as well. Now, if you were in real life, where would you set up camp? In which biome would you set up camp, and why?
I'm going to be, I'm afraid, really boring and say I would probably not move far out of the meadows.
That's great.
I think I would say this is if I were myself in Valheim. I'm not a hugely adventurous person. I would probably set up in the meadows, and I get something really nice going there, and it's nice and cozy, and I'd probably be fishing. We might take little boat trips, not too far out. The first time we got attacked at sea, we'd probably put a stop to that. I think
you sound like me.
Yeah, I think we just have a nice quiet time. My character in game is actually on the rune stones as well. If you come across rune stones by a character called Ulf, sometimes that's my character in the game.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Ulf.
Yeah, well, that's kind of me because he's my character, and his views on things sort of echo my views. So when he says, like, you know, I can't stand it here, it's too dangerous, I can't throw a spear without hitting something that wants to kill me, then that's my Ulf that I'm wandering around with him, and when I get to a new biome, usually I get killed a load of times, and then I write a runestone saying, no, I don't like it here. I'm getting killed.
I love that so much.
Back to the meadows.
Yeah, that is so cool. Yeah, you really add your personal experience to the lore as well as you're progressing, like we all are at that moment. That is really cool.
Yeah,
nice.
So that's those messages from Ulf are like little messages from me. I've been in that biome beforehand, and I'm just telling you, be careful. You will get killed by lots of things here.
That's cool. So that's cool how the story kind of influences it as well as you're playing. So what do you kind of hope that the player's going to take from the story or from the lore, and how it's going to influence them in the world of Valheim?
I mean, my hope really for the lore is that it contributes to the mood, that it builds on the mood of the game as a whole. As I mentioned at the start, I don't want to force anybody to read anything. I'm a big reader in general, but I'm not a big reader in games. Funnily enough, I skip a lot of text, so I try to keep the lore brief and kind of to one side, optional. So if people are into it, I'd love you to read it, but it's not forced on anybody. But I hope that it adds to the general mood of the game without seeming restrictive. And I guess I would like to think, if anybody is inspired by the lore, to either come up with their own stories, it inspires their own creativity, which to say is a wonderful thing to see has happened. Or also, if anybody is inspired by the lore, to read. To maybe go and read for themselves, you know, some of the lays and sagas, Scandinavian mythology, then that would be a big win too, because I think that stuff is wonderful, and there are so many interesting ideas and so much wisdom still in a lot of those old tales that if it inspires someone to have an interest in folklore and mythology, then that would be. It
has raised questions for me, and I've been like, what is that? And I've gone and looked up, like, wait, what's the story here behind all this? So,
and then you dive onto Wikipedia, and a couple of hours later you're like, what just happened?
Yeah, it's very easy to do that. Writing things, I do that all the time. I lose a day on just on Wikipedia.
Lee, so what has been the most rewarding aspect of working on this particular project that we call Valheim, the one we love?
Well, I think seeing the reaction, as we've already mentioned, seeing the reaction of players and just seeing so many people being passionate about it. One thing I remember being particularly rewarding in that sense was when it was first released, which is at the time of the pandemic and the first lockdown, I think, and it seemed to fill a need for a lot of people to socially, because a lot of people weren't able to get out and see their friends, and just because it's got a lovely what's the word for it? It's got a lovely sort of pastoral feel to it, and it's got a nice open air feel. Sorry.
Escapism.
Escapism, yeah. And it feels like, when a lot of people couldn't get outdoors physically, and I heard from people who said that it had felt like a great escape for them at the time. If they were in a flat and they couldn't go outdoors, but they could enter Valheim and they could feel that sense of escape and freedom, and they could be with their friends socially in that setting. So I think, that was a happy coincidence, really. Not a happy coincidence, obviously not a happy time, but you know what I mean, that it turned out like that when it was launched, that it gave a lot of people some sort of respite, I think, from what was going on at the time. So that was really satisfying. And for me, I guess personally, as I said earlier, playing the game with my kids has been great. As a player, that's been a wonderful experience. And they don't like reading the runestones at all. We know, Dad. We know you did the right thing. Don't read out another runestone to us and explain it. We know.
Always how it is. Always.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, one of the things I wanted to say was I love that how you've just hinted at history, lore in the world. So we kind of fill in the gaps, and you've given us just enough as a character with our past memories and stuff to create, our own story for our character. So I'm not asking for you to confirm anything at all here. I just have this huge wish that I have seen so many people post, especially when Iron Gate posts the preview for like their next big update. It comes in the form of this animated cartoon. It's like this little teaser trailer for it, but it's like, somebody beautifully animated this thing, and it's got the music, and we just all get goosebumps when we see it. But I think at some point after Valheim reaches 1.0, I think it would just be criminal to not eventually see a book or, an animated movie or an animated show that just explores some of that story, that Valheim hinted at, and take, one character, Ulf, or somebody else, and get to follow their story and, kind of live through them, or have like a novel or any of those other media sort of help fill in a little bit more gaps, so we can say, oh yeah, I'm like them too in this world. It's just like, I'm sure you've thought of it, or maybe you've heard other people express an interest in that too.
Yeah, I'd like that too. That would, I can't confirm or deny anything at the moment. Of course, but it would be, it would be lovely to see the lore expanded on in that way. And the animations you mentioned at Brick Studios, who making those animations, they do a fantastic job of just conveying, more of the mood of the game. But yeah, I think it's an interesting world, and I think there's lots of potential to tell stories within the world of Valheim. So it's something that, as I say, I can't confirm anything, but I would certainly like to think in the future we'll be able to do a lot more with it.
Yeah. Well, Lee, it's so amazing to hear that you're a fan as well of playing the game, and your children are playing the game too, because we all play it, and I know lots of people play with their family, or sort of create an extended family like we have, in lots of our communities, because sharing something you love is hard to do in real life. Like I find that the people that I generally get close with are the ones that share common interests. So it's so awesome that you're also a fan.
Yes. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and coming on to indulge us in our fandom of the game, and it's been a great honor having you.
Well, it's been a great honor to be here. Really, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's, as I say, it's amazing to see so many people enjoying the game. It really is.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you a lot.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, and I'll be watching the rest of the day, the different things that are going on. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.